Welcome to No Excuses. My name is Mary Fran, and today we're going to talk about the books that I read last week. And I had some good ones, and I had some ones. They all can't all be winners, I guess. So, read 4. The first one, I did not like at all. It was Coistered. I understand the concept. This lady was living a life, and she was searching. She entered a cloister that was a no-speak cloister. She lived her life there. She ended up getting out. It fit her needs when she needed it. She saw stuff, I struggled with it. I struggled to read through the whole thing. It was a slug fest to read it. I don't know. I was interested. I've always wondered about these, silent monasteries and silent, and how they work. And, it was interesting to know that they actually do have an hour of quiet talk, and there are certain quiet places that you can, nooks to go in to quietly give direction or whatever. So that was kind of interesting. But the book was written in such a way that I feel like you almost had to know that environment to actually really understand it. There was stuff that she talked about. I'm like, I have no clue what you're talking about. I can't even picture it in my head because you didn't describe it. You didn't tell me about it. You didn't teach me. And so for that reason, Coistered, it got a 1 star. And I hesitate to give people 1 stars because this is a true story. This is a nonfiction. And I just totally trampled on this lady's book. But 1 star, and that was kind. The next book I read was Trajectory. This book was actually really good. It was set in the world. It's about a young girl, lacked self-confidence, and she was a mathematical whiz, which she kept secret. And she was found out by accident. And in doing so, and in finding out, they actually took her into a secret project. And she started computing trajectories for bombs for the war. And everything was going good. And then they were actually starting to go into the more computers. And it was interesting. And it was interesting as this lady started to get confidence, this young girl, because, she was very young. And they ended up taking her to a different site because they needed somebody that was just really good. And she ended up just saving the day. And it was just a good book. She also found love, got to throw that in there too. It was just a good book because you got to see her, grow up, grow in confidence. It was just a good book. Good, feel good. I actually gave that a 3 star also. It wasn't, top of the notch, but it was definitely not a 1. It was a 3. It was a good average book. The next book I read was Sound of the Gravel. And this is another nonfiction. And this book is written by a lady who grew up in a polygamist family. She was one of a lot of kids. And she actually talks about it. She does not talk very highly about polygamy, which can't blame her. But she talks a lot about how her mother was always sad, was always depressed, was always struggling, was always poor. How they, everybody else had electricity, and she went to visit her grandparents in the States because they were all in Mexico. They were living in Mexico. And she went to visit her grandparents, and she's like, they have electricity and running water. And, this is not from the 50s and 60s. This girl was my age, roughly my age. So, she grew up in the 80s, and she's, running water. And it talks about how, she had a couple brothers and sisters that had, physical and mental disorders, and how it was estimated that it was probably because her mother was malnourished when she was pregnant. Just a really, really, really rough life that she had. And it was a pretty decent read. I also gave this a 3. She actually, you name it, it happened to her. I don't want to steal her thunder. You name it, it happened. And she ended up somewhere around the time where she was actually old enough to be their guardian, being the guardian of a lot of her younger brothers and sisters. And it's probably what saved them, because, it was a really rough life she had. I wanted to give it a 2, but I did end up giving it a 3. It was at least a decent read. I had no problem turning the pages. I had no problem reading more. I wanted to find out what happened. Is her mother gonna leave the bum? Is are they is the kids gonna do this? Are they gonna do that? Is she ever gonna get out of this situation? Is he gonna do this again to her? Whatever. And so I always wanted to read. But as I read, I'm just like, it feels like a woe is me, poor me, poor me. I had a terrible childhood because I had to work. I had a terrible childhood because I didn't have money. I had a terrible childhood, I'm not saying her childhood was great, but, you know, I don't know. We'll see. The last book I read was Natural Selections by Ellen Hildebrand. I read one of hers last week, which I really liked. So I picked this one up. It was more of a short story. And I will say that I was highly disappointed. Highly. From the first paragraphs, I knew what the whole premise of the book was going to be about. It starts with a lady with her boyfriend in an airport. They are getting ready to travel to his dream vacation. And he gets a phone call through the airport because he turned off his cell phone. Because he's always, turn off your cell phones and live in the moment. And he gets a call. And she doesn't know what it is, but he comes back from the phone call and says, go on to the vacation. I've got to go. He lets her go on the vacation herself. In talking about their relationship, you find out that he, has 3 kids that she's never met. They spend most of the weekdays together, but weekends are not that common for them to spend together. And, you just kind of know what's happening. So I struggled because it was just exactly what she thought. There was nothing that was, shocking. Was an easy read. Quick read, easy read. Wasn't a really feel-good one. It was just what it is. So, it was an easy read and it was well written. So 3 stars. For creativity, 2. 2.5 stars. There you go. So those are the 4 books I read this week. I wasn't overly impressed with all of them. I like the little fiction book, Trajectory, the best. Like I said, Sound of the Gravel, not too bad. But, it is what it is. So, on to the next week of reading, and hopefully we'll get some really, really good ones this week. No excuses.